Let's VR! This is Amber, and you're watching virtual reality gameplay on the Gear VR. Today I'm going to be playing Anshar Wars 2. Anshar Wars is a dogfighting game in space, and you control your ship with your head. So there's my ship, and if I look up or down, you can see it adjusts the pitch of my ship, and if I move my head, shake my head left to right, it adjusts the yaw of my ship. And if I tilt my head, like bring my left ear to my left shoulder and my right ear to my right shoulder, that'll adjust the roll of my ship. Uh, and I just shot down a fighter and collected an extra shield bonus. So now I have a bonus shield that's going around me. And you'll see in my heads up display, I can see how much shield I have left, how many missiles I have left. So I'm using a controller right now. You don't need a controller. You can play with the touchpad on the side of the Gear VR. And if you're using the Gear VR touchpad, you'll just tap it to fire your guns. But for me, I am using my right shoulder button or the right bumper on the gamepad to fire guns. And the other weapon you have is missiles. So you have guns and missiles. Guns is on the right shoulder button and missiles is on the left. And if you're using the Gear VR touchpad, you tap for guns, and then slide forward for missiles. So there I just picked up a missile. Your guns are unlimited, but your missiles will run out if you keep using them. But as you kill ships, they drop ammo, and then you can go pick it up to get more ammunition. And so I am trying to down as many of these bombers as I can. And if I look at a ship, you'll see the circle indicate a lock on. And when I get lock on, I can fire my missile at it. So the goal of this mission I'm playing right now is to protect my mothership by fighting all the fighters. And there's not many fighters left, so I'm just gonna go around here and go in this asteroid. And there's some missions where you have to navigate through tunnels and asteroids fields. But for this one, this is the first mission, so it's not too hard. But I did die once or twice the first time I played it, just getting a hang of how these controls work. But once you do, it's pretty natural to steer the ship with your head. And so now my mothership is almost through the portal. So I'm almost done with this first mission. And when I finish, you'll hear my commanders, I guess, start talking to me. Those are the people that have been talking to me, is my commanders and my other allies. Mission completed! Yay! So that shows some stats from this mission, and you can replay it if you want to try to get a better score, although my score is really good for this mission. And then if you click the other button, you'll go to the main menu where you can select which mission you want to play. And currently I've unlocked all the missions. There's 13 missions. And the one I want to show you next is mission 3, because I want to show you that not all these games take place in space. Well, I guess I'm kind of in space, but I'm right above a planet right now. And I'm also flying a slightly different ship. So there's two ships in this game, the fighter, and this one here, the fighter was the one in the first mission, and the one I'm flying here is a bomber. And so you can see I'm shooting, instead of shooting guns, I'm shooting these ion cannon weapon that has more power. And the ship you're flying is dependent on which level you're on. So for each level you'll get a different ship. Except for this mission, this is a special one where you can switch between the bomber and the fighter. So here I'm taking out these bunkers, which is the objective right now, is to shoot those bunkers. But once I shoot a certain amount of them, I can switch ships to go from my bomber to my fighter. And there's a whole story that's going on here about the Nergal invaders that I'm a Anshar pilot, and I'm trying to defeat the enemy. And I didn't get too into the story. It wasn't, didn't really grab me, but it is cool that they have a story to go along with all this dogfighting, which is the best part. And here I am back in the fighter. This is my favorite ship, the fighter, blowing up these bunkers. And here I'm just gonna die, so you can see what happens when you die. Oh no! You've been watching Let's VR, virtual reality gameplay. This is Amber, and subscribe to my channel for more Gear VR videos.